Update your semantic products now. Iain Thomson is here to say they are coming for your privacy. Watch out. And find out how Brexit is already affecting the tech industry. All that and a whole lot more coming right up on Tech News Today.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by CacheFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Tech News Today, episode 1545, recorded Wednesday, June 29th, 2016. This episode of Tech News Today is brought to you by Atlassian. Unleash your team's potential with collaborative software tools like HipChat and Jira, which will enable you to work and communicate better together. Visit Atlassian.com to learn more. And by ZipRecruiter. Are you hiring? With ZipRecruiter.com, you can post to 100-plus job sites, including social networks, all with a single click. Screen, rate, and hire the right candidates fast. Try ZipRecruiter with a free 4-day trial now at ZipRecruiter.com/TNT. And by Zerto, virtual replication and disaster recovery that gives you the confidence to keep your business moving forward no matter what comes your way. Zerto empowers you to protect and recover your IT assets, move to the cloud, and know you're ready for anything. Get a free readiness assessment for your data center at confidencecio.com. Hello, welcome to Tech News Today. This is the show where we tell you everything you need to know about technology today. And we talk about it with people who are passionate about technology. I am Megan Morrone. Jason Howell is out today, but joining me today is Iain Thomson from The Register. Welcome, Iain.
Thanks, Megan. Always a pleasure.
So, Iain, if you're watching the video version, is here with us by photo. Do you want to explain why?
Well, because some idiots at Microsoft can't get their code organized. I upgraded over last weekend to Windows 10, and now Skype is about as reliable as a lace condom. It's just dropping calls left, right, and center, and I can't actually get a video feed. So I'm hoping against hope that you've got a good photo of me and people aren't looking at the screen going, "Ooh, was he ill?"
We have an excellent photo of you. You're smiling without teeth, which is better than probably you're just baring your teeth now. If we actually got to see you, it probably wouldn't be so great.
Yes, no, I'm just holding up a picture of Satya Nadella and punching it repeatedly around the face and neck, but it's a good way of getting rid of stress.
Well, before we first got you called in, we didn't have your audio. We just had your video. So depending on,
I got your audio, but I couldn't get video of you. So I was reduced to writing down rebooting on a Post-it note and holding it up to the camera and hoping the message got through. But sadly, 20 years behind a keyboard has left me with a handwriting that even the sort of shaky doctor would be able to deal with. But we're here in spirit, at least.
We are here. And our top story I know you're going to love, because Microsoft Windows 10 Anniversary Edition is coming out August 2nd. And if you are one of the lucky people like Iain, the 350 million plus lucky people who have Windows 10 already on their devices, you will get it for free. A variant of the OS will install across the entire Windows 10 ecosystem, including PCs, tablets, Windows phones, Surface Hub, Xbox, Internet of Things devices, and HoloLens. So let's hope that those people who paid the $6,000 for the HoloLens Developer Edition aren't having the same kind of problems as you are. So, a date for Windows 10 Anniversary Edition. Are you excited, Iain?
At the moment, I'm livid. But I've got to say, it's the whole Windows 10 Anniversary issue. It's a bit of a publicity stunt in order to drive people onto Windows 10, because basically Microsoft, when it comes to operating systems from Windows 10 onwards, isn't going to be doing the big releases that it was before. It's going to be doing lots of little incremental releases. And this looks very much like that. I mean, you're seeing a few more security features. Cortana's getting a tweak or two. Hopefully Skype is getting some use to it. But I mean, these are all sort of very minor tweaks, if you like, to the central operating system. So you can expect a lot more of these, and they're rolling this out to other server products like their sort of enterprise management tools.
Yeah, and I guess Windows Ink for better pen use, that's coming out. I haven't ever used a tablet with Windows Ink. Have you?
Very, very few people have. I actually have a touch screen on my Lenovo, which I run Windows on, and I have used it. The pen got lost fairly early, so I had to find another one. But it's not bad as ink, as ink stuff does. But tablet, ink writing on tablets it's a fairly niche app. I mean, it's not something to get too excited about.
I won't. Thank you. Speaking of Windows 10, Steve C. wrote in to correct something we said on yesterday's show about Windows installing. If you clicked the red X in the corner of the screen, Steve writes, in the previous window that would pop up, it would say your computer was scheduled to update on a certain date, and the only apparent options were to either agree and click OK or to click do it now if you didn't want to wait for the scheduled update, so to the scheduled date. What really confused people was that it didn't show an option for no thanks if you didn't want to do the update at all. Clicking the red X in the upper right would just dismiss the window. It didn't install it or change anything, so the scheduled date would remain the same and it would automatically update at that time if you didn't opt in to do it sooner. And Steve says, I'm glad they changed it to make it the meaning clearer. This is accurate. The notification said that your update was going to install, and if you click that red box, nothing changed about that. The problem that there was no way to cancel the uninstall from the window, so pretty confusing, but I guess they fixed it. So moving on to our next story. I still got you there, right, Iain?
Oh, yes, still there. Sorry, yes, no, they basically, when it comes to this upgrade, the dialog box for upgrading, Windows has been playing very fast and loose with its readers, and they are not pleased about it, and with good reason. I mean, I'm sorry, all this stuff about, well, all these people are choosing to use Windows 10. Very few people, a fair few people chose to use it, but at the same time, a lot of people felt they were forced to use it. First, it was made an optional upgrade, then a recommended upgrade. Then they put this sneaky little dialogue box in there. It really is quite shameless behavior by Redmond, and if it's a sign of things to come, then I think it could really hurt their operating system business, because this has annoyed so many readers and people that you just talk to in the street. Well, when you talk to people in the street about tech, but this is San Francisco, so we tend to do that a fair bit. But yeah, very sneaky underhand tactics, not happy with it at all, and neither are their customers.
Well, let's move on to a company that people are not technically always happy with either, Amazon. They've been giving customers a deal on the Kindle if they're willing to sit through a few ads on their books. Now The Verge says they'll be making a similar deal on some Android phones, but instead of just ads, it's also apps. Prime members can get big discounts on some unlocked Android smartphones if they agree to, in exchange for the ability to pre-install Amazon bloatware and adware. Right now, the deal is only on the Motorola Moto G and the Blue R1 HD. This could be a good deal for customers who want a cheaper phone. And as Recode points out, it could help Google with their European antitrust problem. Now, I'm interested in your thoughts on both of these. Amazon, both of these.
Well, I mean, everyone likes a discount. It's a question of, but, when you get something for free, the old adage is that you are the product. I'm sure, if you don't mind sitting through a few ads and taking a few apps, provided they don't drain too much of your memory or battery power, then it could be a good deal for those that want a cheap phone. Personally, I take the opposite view. I buy, with my phones, I buy them with the minimum of stuff like that on there. Personally, I use a Nexus, which has a nice clean build on it. But this is really a variation on what computer manufacturers have been doing for years now. I mean, it's difficult to buy a laptop now that doesn't have some kind of bloatware on there. And the manufacturers use that to bring the cost of the final system down. The problem is, as we've found in so many cases, that in many cases this bloatware is system hungry. In some cases, it's been a security risk. So if price is that important to you, then yes, it could be a good option. But speaking personally, I'd say that I'd rather get something which pay a little bit more for something which is a little bit more under your control. But it was a very interesting point about how this helps with the European antitrust problem. Google is having real problems with the EU over this because, basically EU regulators are very suspicious of the motives behind Google's sort of spread. And if Amazon get on the game, then it could give Google's lawyers a little bit of extra ammunition to argue their case. That said, European regulators are famously tough, so it's also somewhat contrarian. So we'll have to see how that works out. But certainly, I don't think anyone down at Mountain View will be weeping salt tears at Amazon's move. Certainly, it will help them a little bit.
Yeah, it's interesting the way that this is sort of falling out for Amazon. I mean, they had the Fire Phone, which was a huge flop. So,
Yep.
but you wouldn't say that they are not making devices. They have the Amazon Echo, which is not a flop. So, as you say with Apple, they make hardware. They also are into services, but hardware is their big thing. Google's services, but now Amazon seems to just be trying to play both sides.
Yes. I mean, the Fire Phone was a bit of a disaster, to be quite frank. I mean, they're currently inhabiting landfills across the country. The Echo is a limited success. Certainly, I worry slightly that in California we're in a bit of a sort of an unrealistic sort of environment because we're all so pro-tech. But certainly, the Echo it's very popular with a certain kind of user. Certainly, one of our reviewers has had one now for a couple of months, and he loves it, but for the fact that his kids worked out how to order music on it, and he got a very large bill. I mean, Amazon it seems to be flailing around trying to decide what it wants to do. Bezos has set himself in some ways the admirable goal of actually building out services and not making much profit just to try and sort of get reach. And it appears to be working in some areas, but as we saw with the Fire Phone, it doesn't work in others. So it's nice that they're getting into bed with Google on this one, but Amazon is just one of those companies that it tries all these ideas, it gives them a shot, and if they work, they work. If they don't, then they're perfectly willing to drop them. So we'll see if consumers go for this one.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know a large segment of our audience is very tired of me talking about Uber, but I think this next story is part of the bigger picture of the future of self-driving cars, so bear with me. TechCrunch reports that Uber is using the data from drivers' phones to give them weekly scorecards of how well they're driving. They can tell if drivers are speeding or driving aggressively or driving too much without taking a break. They'll use this for the passenger's safety and to confirm passengers' complaints or to prove them wrong. So it's sort of like a bot for how's my driving. I think this is really more of just the future of just kind of getting us used to the idea of self-driving cars. Just because now, I mean, basically Uber's saying we can tell what all our drivers are doing, and by telling them and reminding them you're getting safe, it's like automating their behavior, and it's like the first step towards that. That's the way I see this. Because I think we've talked about this before. Their long-term goal is just to have the cars and not to have the drivers at all.
Oh yeah, I mean Uber is barely profitable at the moment because it has to pay drivers and deal with them. When self-driving cars come in, it's going to be an enormous cash cow because they get rid of their main cost and headache, and they can focus purely on getting the software integrated with the cars and getting cars delivered where they need to go. I have to say, when I read this story, I was kind of like thinking back to an old boss I had who used to hover behind you and just check that you were working the whole time. And now, we're actually carrying the boss with us in our smartphones. I mean, it's going to be useful, certainly, as you mentioned, particularly in sorting out complaints, both by and against passengers. But yes, you're right. In the long term, this is all about self-driving cars. This is all about sort of getting that interface between Uber's software and getting people to where they want to go in the most cost-efficient way possible. I don't think drivers are going to like it particularly, simply because being monitored is something which makes an awful lot of people sort of very unsettled. But, if you sign the contract and agree to work for them, then you're going to have to accept this.
Exactly. And I'm wondering if they've been collecting this data. This isn't new that they're collecting the data. Now they're just going to use it. But I am wondering if they are really just collecting data to prove how much safer it will be when they get rid of the drivers.
Oh, I think that's very much a large part of it. I mean, Uber are huge data collectors. They store absolutely everything and analyze it down to its last bits and bytes. It's very important to their business. This kind of business is very, you could get another revenue stream from data mining if you had enough people's consent, so that you could show them ads in an Uber car that were key to their preferences. That would be another revenue stream that the company would be checking out. So yeah, I mean, Uber it's doing some strange things with data. I mean, it played fast and loose with it a bit when it first started out, but now they seem to be getting to the point where they recognise they can't do exactly what they want, and they're using it in a smarter rather than a sort of bulk way.
Mm-hmm. Well, there are software vulnerabilities found every day, and there's no way we could tell you about all of them. But when the vulnerabilities are in software that's meant to protect us, I think it's worth mentioning. Security analysts at Google's Project Zero say if you use Symantec or Norton security products, you'd better update them ASAP. Google says these vulnerabilities are quite, quote, as bad as it gets. And they're currently exposing millions of us, from individuals to large and small businesses, to attacks that could take complete control of our computers. Aside from this really making people question Symantec and Norton products, Iain, what's in it for Google releasing these vulnerabilities? I know they did it honestly. I mean, they did it the way you're supposed to. They told Symantec. They waited for them to install the update and have it auto install. But what's in it for them?
Well, basically, it's all about sort of locking down the web. I mean, Travis is a huge security junkie. He knows his stuff very well, and quite frankly, we should be thanking Google for this one, because the flaws that were in the Symantec code were really crushingly bad. Full privilege escalation attacks, very little input from the user. It really, when we were going through these going through the Project Zero findings, there were sort of muttered imprecations to various deities and how on earth Symantec let these things get through. This is one of the longest-standing security companies out there, and one with a huge footprint, both within the consumer and the enterprise space. And the fact that they hadn't spotted these raises serious questions about the efficacy of their software. Exactly.
Now, for individuals, does Symantec products do Symantec products do anything more than Windows Defender does, say, on Windows?
Well, Symantec would tell you they would, but I think in practice, they do very little more than a very basic service like Windows Defender. I mean, I was talking to a security guy about this today. He's one of the pen testers at IBM, and he was saying, I think we've all got to accept that consumer-grade security software is, at best, a Band-Aid. It's not going to make you totally secure. In the case of Windows Defender and Kaspersky and Symantec and Norton and various other of the consumer software titles, this is something that malware writers actually use to test the efficacy of their malware. So if they write some code, they run it through they run it through a Windows Defender or a Symantec engine, and then if it detects it, then in some cases they'll actually offer malware as a service, so that if these things detect it, they'll give you a new piece of malware so you can still carry on enslaving other people's computers. So, I mean, consumer-grade security software is it's better than nothing, because after all, people always go after the low-hanging fruit. But I don't think we can seriously pretend anymore that it provides anything close to total security. I think in Symantec's case, Symantec's been making a lot of noise about how it uses heuristic detection and that sort of thing to pick up malware, but I don't honestly see there's that much there that differentiates it on the consumer level from pretty much any other sort of mainstream security package out there.
So, I mean, should people be worried? I know that most of the updates will automatically install if you have your automatic updates turned on. There's some advice on their website. I mean, is this something people should be concerned with? This Symantec
if you're running Symantec or Norton, you need to be going straight onto it now and making sure that you're totally updated. Because now that the news has broken, it's going to be a matter of days before we see exploits for this in the wild. Symantec say they haven't seen any so far, but as we've seen with the Microsoft patching schedule, I mean, they call it Patch Tuesday is the patching schedule, but Malware Wednesday is when the malware writers start releasing their the first things designed to catch all those people who haven't been patching on time. So if you are running Norton or Symantec code, get onto the website, make sure your drivers are updated, because they will be coming for you.
Oh, that's scary.
It's security, only the paranoid survive.
Well, in today's installment of A Robot Just Stole Your Job, you report that an elite fighter pilot and retired Air Force colonel has just been beaten in an air combat simulation by an AI running a $35 Raspberry Pi, running on a $35 Raspberry Pi. Tell us about this.
Yeah, this was fascinating because, flight simulators have been around for a while, and the Air Force is obviously very, very keen to try and look for ways to augment its pilot's abilities. What you got with this was, I mean, usually when you think sort of machine intelligence, you think some server somewhere. But this was, as you say, just a Raspberry Pi, a 35 quid bit of equipment. Although I get the feeling if some American military manufacturers sell it to the government, they'll charge about 10 grand for it, based on past performance. But it was the Alpha system was amazingly good. Now, they were going up against, admittedly a retired Air Force colonel, but still someone who's taught thousands of pilots how to dogfight and has been using AI and has been trying out computer-simulated piloting systems for the last couple of decades. And it beat him hollow. He couldn't get a kill on it at all. He got killed every time. And this was after they'd handicapped the AI by giving it shorter range of missiles, less maneuverability, no radar coverage over the sort of combat area, which the human pilot had. The fact that you can actually beat someone you could beat someone with that level of skill on such a consistent basis did make me think that, quite frankly, the current generation of Top Guns are going to be the last. Because there are enormous advantages about taking humans out of the cockpit, and there are also a few major disadvantages. But from an Air Force point of view, and from the other arms of the U.S. military, because let's not forget, I think it's the U.S. Army has the second largest Air Force in the world. There's an awful lot of hardware out there which this could be applied to.
Yeah, you say it's great for the pilots, but I mean, there's a big moral question here, right, too? I mean, you're saving the life of the pilot, but not the people, not if there's a human pilot in the other plane, or, it's a big drone question, right? I mean, it's a moral question that I can't answer.
Yes, I think this is very important, because one of the things that stops politicians deciding to go to war quite so often is the thought of all those people receiving telegrams from the War Department saying that we regret to inform you that your son or daughter has been killed in a foreign land. When you've got systems like this, then it's going to be an awful lot easier to deploy them and to go to war. But that's very little comfort for the for the people on the ground who are getting the missiles thrown at them somewhat. Either accidentally or on purpose. That's the old joke. What's the difference between an Afghan wedding and a terrorist camp? Don't ask me. I just fly the drone. But there are serious moral questions which we're going to have to face. With the growth of AI and with the growth of systems like this, we are going to have to come to sort of really some deep thinking about how we deploy these systems, whether we deploy them, and the level of control with which we keep them under our grip, as it were. They're questions that people are already raising, but I'm not seeing much movement on the part of the military in terms of providing some decent answers.
Yes, I mean, we've been talking over the past week about self-driving cars and the ethics of self-driving cars. There was the John Markoff story about programming, the trolley problem, programming who you're going to run into, and we got a lot of mail saying, you look at the statistics and self-driving cars are safer, and they're going to have to make that choice fewer times than people can. And, but we're sort of rolling this over in our minds a lot. But then you think about drones and, AI fighter pilots, and it's already going on. We're already there. Someone's already making those decisions on behalf of our, military. So I'm glad it's not me.
The self-driving car one is really interesting, because if you put it somebody logically, is it better for one person to die or four people to die in a car crash? If a car is going out of control or is going to face a crash, which is the better solution? And almost everyone will go, well, it's better, that just one person dies. But then when it's you in the car and the car is deciding to crash into something solid rather than into somebody else to save their lives, then I don't think buyers are going to be too keen on that one. And I think they're going to have to find a way to really sell this to people, or improve the software to such a point. But software-controlled cars do seem to be pretty safe in the limited testing that we've had so far.
Mm-hmm. Well, Facebook announced today that they are building a better news feed for you. But journalists across the web are sort of shaking in their cubicles a little bit, as Facebook says they'll now prioritize personal posts over those of professional publishers. That includes posts from both the professional pages that you've liked and those that your friends are sharing. So this was, Facebook is they're constantly, looking at our data, and what they learned from that is that we want to see personal posts. We don't want to see publishers post. And it's a little bit scary, because I think we're at a point where publishers really need Facebook, but Facebook doesn't really need publishers. What do you think?
Well, honestly, I think the extent to which Facebook is driving traffic in this area is somewhat overstated. There was some very interesting research last week, I think it was, that showed that over half of people who click like on an article posted on Facebook don't actually read the article. They might scan the headline, but that's about it. Now, you're right, Facebook is trying, it's their stated aim is to try and become the daily newspaper for the entire world. I think they're being slightly disingenuous on this one. What was noticeably missing from this announcement was the role of sponsored posts, where you actually pay Facebook money in order to get a certain number of hits on your post. And I think that's one of the key drivers behind this. They want to carry on driving that business and to start making money from it that way. I think at the end of the day, and I'm sure Twitter's aware of this, and we're very much aware of it. At the end of the day, the only formula for success in journalism that has worked in the last 2,000 years is writing news which people think is important and want to read. And I'm not sure Facebook can provide that in the kind of broad way that an independent publication can. And there's also a very important point in terms of what people see, because what Facebook, and to an extent Google and others, have trained their algorithms to do is feed people the data that they like to see. And it's not exposing people to alternative viewpoints or alternative opinions that much. And I do worry that we're becoming sort of increasingly put in these little silos. Okay, that person's a liberal, that person's a conservative. Just make sure they get liberal or conservative news. And I don't think that's particularly healthy, certainly in terms of getting an informed populace, which is essential for a democracy to work.
I absolutely agree. I feel like this is also just another brick in the walled garden in our echo chamber.
Absolutely.
I'm pretty liberal in how I accept friend requests on Facebook. I, kind of look, do they have some friends? Is it someone that watches the network? But, I basically accept everyone. And that gives me just a really an interesting look. Like there are people that definitely disagree with me on politics that I see, and and I'll look sometimes, but I do find myself kind of muting them so that I don't have to see what they're saying, because when it's just something that I disagree with, it's one thing, but when it's offensive, then I might mute them. And I understand that I'm creating my own echo chamber. But it's confusing because sometimes that's not what I want at Facebook. Maybe I want to look at the news to find a dissenting opinion, although sometimes that's hard too.
No, indeed. I don't think it's particularly healthy if we're just all fed news that we agree with. I think, and that's why the role of an independent media is so important. But I mean, you've already had the abandonment of the fairness doctrine in this country, which has had some very interesting social effects. And I do fear, as you say, this technological echo chamber that people are building up around themselves in the way from news is very harmful in the long run. And I think it's something with which we've got to be paying increasing attention to.
Yeah, I definitely agree, and I think this might be a result of just the trouble that Facebook was getting in a few weeks ago, when everyone was saying that they were biased, that they in their feed, in their trending news, they were choosing it, and so people were, and so maybe they were just saying, like, okay, well, news is hard, hands off, you guys just talk about your pets.
Yes, I think Facebook was very surprised by the kerfuffle about that. Because I don't think there's any sort of guaranteed evidence that they were censoring feeds. I know they got a lot of flack from the conservative press for it, but you can't try and please all the people all the time. And it certainly seems from what we heard from people who were initially employed by the company to sort of set up these feeds, that it looked a very amateurish operation in the first place. But you're right, it does get them out of something of a hole on this one. I just worry that they might panic themselves into a decision which they later regret.
Yeah, I mean, it does seem to be sort of a 360 from where they were a year ago. I mean, they got in trouble first because the trending news didn't show anything about Ferguson. It was only showing, the ice bucket challenge. And so that's why they changed. And they said, okay, let's really figure out what's important and make some choices. And now it sounds like they're like, well, it was really hard for us to make the choices. And a lot of you guys got mad at us, so we're not going to do it anymore. That's what I feel like. That's what I feel like is going on. It's
not as though, their last position did them any favors, certainly. I think you're possibly right. It may just have been a way to get them out of a rather sticky situation. I think possibly it also shows a certain lack of courage on their part, but still, that's their business, and it is not for us to criticise on that perspective. But I mean, at the end of the day, if they want to be the national newspaper for every person on the planet, then they've got to take a stand sooner or later. It just comes across, as far as I can see, as fairly wussy. Not that impressed, as I say.
Agreed. Yeah, and you said it's their business, and it is a business. That's when, at the end of the day.
Yes, it's all about money at the end of the day. So, I mean, as any publication, as any journalist publication is as well, with a few notable exceptions. But yeah, I mean, it's if you're going to try and do these things, then do them professionally. And so far, Facebook seems to be tripping over itself and desperately sort of backtracking every step of the way so far. So I'm hoping they get slightly more professional about it.
Well, after the break, there is no one with whom I enjoy talking about internet privacy more than you, Iain Thomson. So we will tackle some of those stories next. But first, let's take a minute to thank Atlassian, the sponsor of this episode. Today, nearly anything is possible. If we can dream it, teams can build it. So how do you bring everyone together to create what's next? Team up with Atlassian, the makers of collaboration software that lets teams work together and communicate better, assign, track, and manage tasks for any project, no matter how complex. That is the clarity of Jira. You can create and share content, organize results, and bring team members up to speed with the flexibility of Confluence. Instant message or video chat with your team from any device. That's the freedom of HipChat. Test, review, and manage code in real time. That's the power of Bitbucket. We love the various Atlassian programs. Our engineering team uses Confluence to document equipment and work processes, and they use Jira for managing vendors and organizing their constantly growing pile of tasks. For everything from planning events to working on serious operational issues, we tie all of our communications together with HipChat. Visit Atlassian.com and see how Jira, Confluence, HipChat, and Bitbucket give your team everything you need to organize, discuss, and complete shared work. Atlassian, helping teams everywhere team up to create what's next. The 2017 Intelligence Authorization Bill. Iain, what is it and why is it horrible?
Well, 99% of it is actually not bad at all. It's basically a funding bill for the intelligence community. However, amendments have been tacked in there, which make it really quite unpleasant indeed. We've had a concerted push from Congress over the last couple of months to reform the use of national security letters. Now, these are letters that the FBI sends out thousands of times a year, which tell telecommunications companies or even email operators that you must provide us with the records of a particular target suspect. You cannot tell anyone about this. In fact, the only way that you can even inform your customers that you've ever received a national security letter is through the use of what we call a warrant canary, which is a little clause you put in your terms and conditions saying we have not received a national security letter, and when that disappears, then everyone knows they've got one. Now, the changes they're proposing would basically allow the FBI to use a national security letter, which doesn't require judicial approval, to get your internet history, which sites you go to, how long you spend on them, the metadata associated with that. And it also makes some changes to the oversight of the intelligence community by government bodies. Now, in the case of the NSA, the National Security Letters changes, we've seen very similar language put in on amendment to the Email Privacy and Communications Act. We've seen last week somebody tried to push it through as an amendment to another spending bill. And Rule 41, which is the Department of Justice's attempt to insert similar language into its general codes of conduct without a vote being held by Congress, purely by judicial approval. So this is something the FBI wants. Senator Coney from Texas has said it's the FBI's top priority, and they're trying it again, which is why Senator Wyden put a hold on the bill, and it's currently stuck in Congress.
So how long will that hold last?
As long as he wants it there, to be honest. Senators, it appears, have this ability to put a hold on bills. Sometimes, as I understand it, anonymously as well, but he has actually come out and said it, because I think basically Wyden has taken the view, and it's correct in my perspective, that this is a pernicious bit of language which has no place in there without a full investigation. I was speaking to him yesterday, and he said something very interesting, which was a lot of Congress doesn't understand, the ramifications of this sort of thing. And when you explain it to them, they get it, but no one's been explaining it to them. And so, where people have a certain amount of technical knowledge, that helps. But, it really needs some reasoned debate and some intelligent debate as to where we're going with this. Because if you're just going to hand over these sort of powers willy-nilly, they don't essentially make us that much safer. I mean, this wouldn't have stopped the Orlando shooting, for example, as the FBI has acknowledged. But at the same time, national security letters have been abused in the past. The Inspector General for the FBI has noted in numerous reports, 2008, 2010, 2014, that in some cases these national security letters were used purely on a vindictive basis by individual members of the FBI. And so they need a certain amount of oversight, and that's where the judiciary comes in. If you amend them in this way so that you can't have an independent judiciary saying, yes, that's not right or that is right, then it's a recipe for greatly reduced privacy. And I say privacy knowing there's still probably a drinking game going on whenever I mention that word.
So would you say this is a case of, another case of this this eroding our privacy at the same time not really protecting our security at all?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the thing is, the FBI already has the ability to get this internet history information. Senator Wyden, when he actually wrote in the USA Freedom Act a clause specifically for this, saying that if they went to a judge and asked for a warrant, they could get this information. In the case of an emergency, the so-called ticking time bomb scenario, then they could go ahead, get that information anyway, and then retroactively ask a judge for permission for it. So, I mean, they have these powers already. This is just about them not being bothered to do the paperwork and not wanting to go up in front of a court and explain their actions, which is fundamentally an anti-democratic thing.
Well, moving on, we've talked about algorithmic discrimination on this show a few times. Academics and journalists have been digging deep to try to uncover how algorithms work. These algorithms can be either intentionally or non-intentionally insidious, and trying to figure out how some of them work from the bigger companies involves a fair amount of hacking, the good kind of hacking. Now Wired reports that some of those researchers and journalists are suing the Justice Department to make it easier to detect algorithmic discrimination. They're suing because right now some of the work that they've been doing is punishable under the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, which I know we've talked about. What do you make of this?
I think I honestly wish them a great deal of luck. This is yet another example of where legitimate security research is being held back by outdated laws. It's very much like the Wassenaar arrangement, which cropped up about 6 months ago, which is an arms control arrangement, but which also covers software. And the U.S. government was proposing criminalizing the use of things like fuzzers and certain security software tools, which are tremendously useful in keeping us all safe. But because the bureaucrats that wrote this stuff didn't understand the language the technology they were writing about, got caught up in the net. And it's the same here with the CFFA. These people are doing some seriously good research, and they shouldn't have to run the fear of going to jail just because somebody doesn't like the results they've got and then uses this outdated law to try and make life difficult for them. I think we're going to be seeing an awful lot more of this because security tools are getting better. The law isn't keeping up, and quite frankly, these people deserve all the support they can get because they're doing something which makes us all safer.
Right. So, I mean, basically, they're saying that hacking should be a First Amendment right in this way.
Up to a point, they're saying white hat hacking. No one's going to defend the right for black hats to go out there and hack through our systems. But if you can prove that there is a legitimate, research reason for doing this sort of thing, then yes, certainly, I think that should count under a First Amendment right. I mean, we've got to remember it's only a few years ago that when researchers went to companies and said you have this vulnerability and this vulnerability in your software, they were quite often threatened with prosecution for under sort of hacking charges, and in many cases, in a few cases, it actually came to court. So, we've been down this route before, and it didn't end well then. So I think we do need to either a change in the law or some case law out there that shows that legitimate researchers do have the right to go in and fiddle about with these things.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about Facebook yesterday and whether they used your location to suggest friends. And, it just felt there's so much data out there about you. And the algorithms are so much bigger than we can begin to imagine.
Oh, yes.
I was watching Spotlight, the movie, and I think about these journalists with their paper and their pen and their out there, it's so much different now. I mean, to really be able to delve into really deep stories, especially if someone's trying to hide something, it takes white hat hacking.
Oh, indeed. I mean, Orwell had the vision of the telescreen on the wall, but he got that one wrong. Instead, we're buying them for a few $100s and sticking them in our pockets. You can tell an enormous amount about somebody just through their online and web use activities, and this needs to be. It's not legal to snoop around someone's house. It's not legal to take photos of them inside their bedroom and to see how they sleep at night. Yet plenty of people have their smartphones recording this sort of data, so they can use the sleep apps to help them get a good night's sleep and that sort of thing. We need some kind of thinking, of joined up thinking on this, because privacy is the new civil rights movement. This is going to be what we're going to be fighting our court battles about for the next 20 years. So we need to gear up and actually get into action on this.
Well, here's another story about privacy that you reported on this week. If you're visiting the U.S. in the future, you might soon have to hand over your passport and your Twitter handle. What?
Yes. I mean, this had me. This was one of many things that had me screaming to the rafters. This is an utterly bonkers proposal by U.S. Customs. That they're saying it's optional, but they'll want to put a box on the form that you fill in when you get your visa to come over here, asking for your social media handles. It has to be one of the most useless ideas they've ever come up with. The thinking would be, well, it would help them, find possible terrorists and keep us all safe. But ask yourself this: if you're a terrorist, A, would you post about it on social media? B, if you did, would you then go on to give that social media account to U.S. Customs, or would you prepare a dummy one or just refuse to do it in the first place? I mean, this is not new, unfortunately. Under the old I-94 form that I used to have to fill in when I came to this country, there was a question saying, have you ever participated in acts of genocide or were involved with war crimes committed between 1933 and 1945? Now, somehow, I don't think they got any genocidal geriatric Nazis with this box, but, I have heard of people who ticked yes just for a lark and got promptly deported, but you're not going to catch anyone with something like this. And this latest proposal from Customs is just utterly bonkers. It will do nothing other than drown them out with useless information.
Well, it's like, you're not legally, when you're traveling within the United States, you don't have to show your driver's license, right? Isn't it true that you can say, no, I'm not going to, they'll take you, you might miss your flight and you'll be checked, but it's not a law that you have to show your driver's license within the United States, is it?
I'm not familiar with United States law on the matter. I thought you did have to show some form of photo ID. But I mean, it's just with regards to this particular proposal, I don't see how it benefits them. And it could have actively harmed security, because if you've got to pay someone to go through this, the number of false positives that it could generate would be huge. I mean, we had a case in 2012 where a couple of tourists from the UK and Ireland were coming over to America. Somebody actually did go through their Twitter feeds and said, and one of them had jokingly said, yeah, we're going to go and cause a riot in Los Angeles and dig up Marilyn Monroe's body. Now, nobody was going to suggest that they are actually going to do that, but they still got arrested when they landed and deported 12 hours later. It's duff security. It's trying to overreach on things, and it's going to lead to a lot of false positives, a lot of aggravation, and it won't harm terrorism in one little bit.
I just looked it up from the TSA, and I think you do have to show your driver's license or some kind of ID. I don't know where I'd heard that. Must have been starting to spread rumors. Apparently, you do have to.
Yeah, I mean, if you're traveling within the UK, you have to, on a UK internal flight, you have to show a passport or a driver's license. So, I mean, I can see the reasoning behind that, but social media feeds, it makes no sense.
Yeah, it doesn't right now. I mean, but I guess it's a warning for the future.
Oh, yes. Well, it's optional now, but we'll see. I mean, if it gets in now, then It could be mandatory later on, in which case start deleting social media feeds.
Well, we got some feedback from Phil, who wrote in after watching our episode where I said I'd heard that it was easy to accidentally upload a video to YouTube on your Android phone. We called it buploading. I don't know if we invented that term. But he writes, I don't know when it showed up, but when I went to my YouTube app on my Samsung Galaxy S7 Edge, there is a prominent red up arrow or an upload button now on the home screen. When you click that button, it takes you to the videos on your device. If you unintentionally select a video, in theory, I guess you could accidentally bupload a video. So I don't know. Have you ever heard of anyone buploading, Iain?
I must admit I haven't. No. I mean, it's... Well, it's... as we say in this business, to err is human. To really muck things up, you need a computer, and it just seems to be one of those instances, where, things are. We're always finding new ways to muck these things around. So it sounds like Phil's advice is interesting, but buploading sounds vaguely rude, if truth be told.
I know, coming from you, really, too. But I'm glad
I know.
I am glad that I made you laugh, though, after your Windows 10 experience. So thank you, Phil, also.
Not a problem.
After the break, Brexit is almost a week old, and we will hear how Iain thinks it is affecting the tech industry. But first, let's take a minute to thank ZipRecruiter, the sponsor of this episode. Are you hiring? Do you know where to post your job to find the best candidates? If you want to find the perfect hire, you need to post your job on all the top job sites. And with ZipRecruiter, now you can. Posting jobs in one place is not +enough to find quality candidates. Don't leave it up to chance. With ZipRecruiter.com, you can post to more than 100 job boards, including social media networks like Facebook and Twitter and Google+, all with one click. Just post once and watch your candidates roll into ZipRecruiter's easy-to-use interface. ZipRecruiter offers optimized pages that look great on any screen. Find candidates in any city or industry nationwide. No more juggling emails or calls to your office. You can add multiple users to your account. Quickly screen candidates with real-world questions using free-form, multiple choice, or yes/no formats. View candidate responses in conjunction with their resumes. If you've ever tried to hire someone yourself, you will be thrilled at how easy it is. Find out today why ZipRecruiter has been used by over 800,000 businesses. More than 100 million candidate applications have been delivered. Right now, you can try ZipRecruiter for free by going to ZipRecruiter.com/TNT. That's ZipRecruiter.com/TNT. And we thank ZipRecruiter for their support of Tech News Today. So it has been almost a week since Great Britain voted to leave the EU, and we haven't talked about it much on this show because I was waiting to talk to you. I know you and Leo had a spirited discussion on last Sunday's Twit, but I thought...
That's a very polite way of putting it.
Yes, it was spirited. I loved it. It was really interesting. But so I thought we would maybe take a few looks at some of the effects in the tech space. We can start with Microsoft. CEO Satya Nadella was asked if Brexit would change the way he invested in the country. He says no, but he also asserted the case for a more connected world. What do you make of this?
Well, I think he's right. He's accurate in the short term. I don't think Microsoft's making plans to shut down its offices anytime soon. Bear in mind that with the vote, it's going to be at least 2 years before the UK actually leaves the EU. And it's possible, although highly unlikely, that we may not, in fact, leave the EU if there's another vote on this. But assuming that we are coming out in 2 years, Microsoft is still going to invest quite heavily in the UK when it comes to its existing operations. It's going to complicate matters, however, because up until now you've had a single regulatory framework for the entirety of Europe. And now Britain's going to have to come up with its own framework on this. And unless the two match very closely, then they're going to have to work out a whole new set of policies and a whole new set of, and maybe tweak some products here and there. I think he's right in that, he thinks we are better off within the EU and working together, all connected and all sort of sharing similar ideals. But I think in the longer term, if Microsoft is after all a commercial company. It's going after the biggest markets it can, and do you therefore go after the 60 million people who inhabit the UK or the 28 other countries that make up the EU and sell to them instead? So I think, yes, Microsoft isn't going to be abandoning the UK anytime soon. It does have advantages in that it can use its American stuff in the UK because we speak a roughly similar language. Although it was noticeable that a couple of operating systems ago, they released it without a British English option, which caused an awful lot of people in the UK to get very, very angry indeed because we spell colour with a U and that sort of thing. It's aluminium, not aluminum, but I could go on like this for ages. But, there are regional product differences which are going to have to be taken into account, but and more importantly, regional regulatory differences. And as we currently, don't know what the regulations would be in the UK, then it's got to be causing him some concern. And I suspect he'll be expanding the Irish operations before he expands the UK ones.
Mm-hmm. Well, so ZDNet says only 15% of tech executives supported leaving the EU. But TechCrunch says that UK startups are in a position to benefit from Brexit. That's kind of the first I've heard of anyone benefiting from it. What do you think of that?
Yes, I read TechCrunch's article and I'm really not impressed. Their first point was that it would increase access to talent, and I'm sorry, it really wouldn't. At the moment, we've already got serious shortages in some areas in the UK when it comes to talent, and we've been filling those in by having people from Europe come over and work in the UK. A central tenet of the EU is the right of labour to move freely within the EU and work in whatever country they want and pay taxes in whatever country they want. And it means when you've got an attractive country to live in like the UK, lousy summer weather besides, we've pulled in a lot of people, a lot of good coders from Poland, from France, from Germany, who actually want to live in the EU, want to live in the UK and work there. And if we come out of the EU, it's going to be much harder for them to do so unless we work out some kind of rules to allow it. Now, I took the point that, yes, we have these entrepreneur visas and the exceptional talent visas, but again, it's just another step. It's just another set of paperwork which is going to deter some people from moving to the UK. Our venture capitalism industry is not as developed as in some other countries. And I don't honestly feel that leaving the EU is going to give startups any kind of advantage. It may not give them a massive disadvantage, but I don't think it'll give them an advantage in any way at all.
So I know this is a huge question, but is there anything big that we missed about the connection in the tech industry with Brexit? Anything else that has been on your mind?
Well, the exodus is already, there are worrying signs developing. Vodafone, who's one of the largest mobile phone operators in the UK, is now talking about shifting its headquarters out of the country if we do leave the EU. Certainly within the financial services and banking sector, they're already talking about having to shift their operations to Paris and Frankfurt. So there's a lot of skilled IT admins and a lot of skilled coders who are going to be looking to say goodbye to London and say hello to the Champs-Élysées. I think it was still only 6 days into the decision, and it's still not 100% decided. I don't know. Sunday I was fuming. Last Thursday night I was screaming and shouting. My wife learnt some very interesting new British swear words, but we're only 6 days in. We're down a 2-year course, so we shall have to see how this develops. But at the moment, not looking good.
So I know you're someone who really looks to the future a lot. Mostly in the tech space. But was this something that you saw coming?
No, this isn't even something that the Leave campaign saw coming. When voting ended at 10 p.m. on Thursday night, the head of the Leave or one of the heads of the Leave campaign, Nigel Farage, was on TV and he said, "No, I don't think we've done it." This was seen as very much a sort of a losing pony. Then, as the night went on and it became clear, and then when the vote was finally announced, the Leave campaign actually admitted they didn't actually have a plan for this one. They hadn't thought that far ahead because they didn't think they were going to win. And one of their leaders, Boris Johnson, who looks like a man who's been attacked by a large sort of blonde mob, has just basically looked crushed when he came out of his house in the morning, refused to speak to the press, scurried into his car, and has been seen very little in public since. It came out of the blue. It's an enormous mess. No one really, a lot of people didn't really consider their vote quite well. And there's a very clear warning here for America, I think, because it was considered in the UK that nobody sensible could ever, vote to leave the EU. We've been there for 40 years. It's kept the peace in Europe for 70. And then the Leave vote came as an enormous shock. And I do suspect that some of the people who are saying, well, there's no possible way that the American people will be dumb enough to elect Donald Trump, are in for a shock, because there is a large number of people out there who don't feel in any way connected to the economic system. They have a number of grievances which aren't being addressed, and they are willing to vote, and even if it's to vote to burn it all down. So, admittedly, the UK vote was a shock, and as Andy Horowitz pointed out, it has taken away the Brits' favourite pastime of discussing how stupid American voters are, because it turns out we were just as bad ourselves. But yes, it's a bad situation, and I think America needs to take real notice on this one, because this kind of mood is spreading.
Well, thank you so much for answering all my questions and talking about this. I know it's close to your heart, and so I appreciate it.
No, not at all, and we'll see how it works out.
Yes. So TNT's fan of the day is Will Simpler. Will asked, I would really love to see an Alexa skill app. I could come home and say, Alexa, turn on Tech News Today, and I would hear the truly important news of the day as I go about the house every evening. You can, Will. I might have done it for someone out there with an Echo. If you listen on your Amazon Echo, you can send us a video of summoning me on your Echo or your Dot. I'd love to see it. You can email me at megan@twit.tv or show us how you watch or listen to TNT on any other device. Just record a video or take a picture of yourself or your setup. Post it on Instagram, Google+, Twitter, or Facebook. Use the hashtag HowIWatchTNT, and we will find it. If we haven't found yours, feel free to email it directly to tnt@twit.tv. After the break, find out how in the future scientists might be able to spy on us from inside our bodies. But first, let's take a minute to thank Zerto, the sponsor of this episode. Zerto is IT asset protection, disaster recovery, and cloud continuity for confident CIOs. Confidence can make or break businesses in today's IT world. It can mean the difference between hesitation and action, success or irrelevance. Zerto's cloud-based business continuity solutions arm today's CIOs and IT pros with the confidence to know their systems are ready for anything. With Zerto, you can recover from downtime, test new technology, and move to the cloud in a matter of clicks while maintaining business continuity. Zerto's virtual replication technology gives you the power to simplify your migrations, switch to new infrastructure faster, and get quicker ROI. Know your data is protected by breakthrough hypervisor-based software that puts the power of continuous replication at your fingertips. Migrate to the cloud with no disruptions with enterprise-class software that empowers you to seamlessly and safely move virtualized workloads between public, private, and hybrid clouds. Get complete comprehensive data protection in one smart solution for BCDR across storage and hypervisors. Recover from any disruption with checkpoints every few seconds. Protect and recover files, VMs, and applications from any point in time. See for yourself how Zerto simplifies your data replication and disaster recovery. Plus, get a free readiness assessment for your data center at confidentcio.com. That's confidentcio.com, and we thank Zerto for their support. Researchers at the University of Stuttgart have used 3D printing technologies to create a nano camera that's smaller than a grain of salt and can be injected into your body with a syringe that could be used for spying on your organs, like an endoscopy. Or, Forbes says it could be used to put inside a drone the size of a beak that could be used for real spying. What do you think about the nano camera, Iain?
I was highly skeptical at first, but then I actually know the guy that wrote the Forbes article.
Oh.
He's a camera specialist, and he knows his stuff. He wouldn't put his name to this unless it was possible. Okay, there's a couple of issues here. First off, the injectable camera. Yes, could be very, very useful for doctors. I don't think we're in trouble from people having cameras and injected into their bodies and them being used to spy. I've been
on your organs.
More concerned by. Well, yes, I mean, because they can't actually see out. I'd be much more concerned with injectable microphones. Now, if you can get a microphone that does this and then just slap someone's shoulder and sort of push it through their skin in a way that they may not notice, then instant bugging technology. I think what they did, what was very interesting, was this tiny CMOS camera, because this fabrication technique could build a usable camera, which, as you say, could be put on a very, very small drone indeed. And this technology is coming. Whether or not the Stuttgart boffins have got it right, or whether whether someone else is working on similar things, this kind of technology is a logical next step for where we're going. Miniaturization of components. we're getting to, there's a marvelous book by Neil Stevenson called The Diamond Age, where he envisages police don't actually chase after you. They just fire little drones after you, which attach themselves to your skin and report back once they've got your movements. This is where this technology is going. So I wouldn't suggest that we panic immediately, but we need to keep a very weather eye on this just to make sure that where this sort of thing is deployed, it's deployed in a usable fashion and under strict judicial oversight.
So you wouldn't say, watch out, they're coming for you for these cameras yet?
Not yet. No. Give it well, I mean, they've built the camera. You've still got a bit, and there are very small drones being built, but they do tend to be hampered by the fact you've got to carry a battery around, and battery technology is still fairly primitive. So most of the drones that would be small enough to use this can really only have like a sort of flight time measured in minutes. But as the technology improves, we've shown time and time again that technology miniaturizes, battery technology will get better. And, okay, I'm lousy at doing predictions, but 10 years, law enforcement will have these sort of things, maybe even sooner.
Look out for drone bees.
Well, certainly the fly screens on our house are getting an upgrade, but yes.
Yeah, when we have to be suspicious of flies, that's when, I don't know, I'll just prefer to live in VR, I guess.
Well, yes, we could all just be sitting in the living room with the goggles on, never moving and getting bed sores. But I'd like to think there's still room for exercise and getting out and about in the world. It's not all that scary out there after all.
Agreed. Well, everyone should go outside now. Iain, thank you so much for joining us and talking about all the technology news. Is there anything else that we haven't covered that you're working on that you can talk about?
No, I mean, there's some interesting stuff coming up. We've just had the Amazon conference, and there's been some very interesting stuff on cloud computing coming up. But all in all, we're working away. The news is largely good, and apart from the fact that Microsoft can't build a communications app to save their life, then everything's fine.
Well, hopefully we'll have everything up and running next time I talk to you, but it's always a pleasure. Thank you.
It is my weekend's job to get this sorted.
Okay. Well, Iain Thomson is a reporter at the Register at Iain Thomson on Twitter. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you, Megan. Always a pleasure. Have a great night.
You too. Tomorrow's guest will be Sam Miskovich from Ars Technica. TNT records live every Monday through Friday around 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, 11 p.m. UTC at twit.tv/live. You can be part of the show by emailing us at tnt@twit.tv or leaving us a short voicemail at 260-TNT-SHOW. You can also hit us up on Twitter. We are at Tech News Today. Now, many of you participated in our annual Twit audience survey at the beginning of this year, providing helpful feedback on our programming and advertising practices. Our partner PodTrack Analytics is currently asking avid podcast fans, including Twit listeners, to chime in and provide anonymous information about the trends and needs of podcast audiences. If you are interested in participating in PodTrack's audience panel, visit podtrack.com/panel for more information. And you can find all the ways to subscribe to this show at twit.tv/TNT. And if you want to tweet at me, I'm at Megan Morrone. Thanks to our technical director, Kara, and thanks to Burke for running the prompter and all the folks who help us produce this show every single day. And thanks to you for talking tech with us today. We'll see you tomorrow.